Hi, everybody, and welcome to Forward Motion. I'm Karen Allyn. I've got to introduce you to Julie Flygare. She has written a memoir that I first discovered from an article in Marie Claire magazine. I set this article aside because it is the coolest story. Julie suffers from narcolepsy. She wrote this memoir. Can you see this book? There you go. Wide Awake and Dreaming, a memoir of narcolepsy. Julie was 22 years old, and she had a bunch of symptoms. I'm going to ask her to tell you about them, but this memoir goes through everything that she went through, and she's here to tell us about it. She's alive and well and okay. She's 29 now, but she was 22 years old and in law school. And the article that I first saw was freaky. Freaked me out because it's really, really scary. It's not just what we think of as narcolepsy, which I would think, okay, you're standing in line, you snooze a little, you fall asleep. No. And anybody out there watching who actually suffers from narcolepsy knows that it's way more than that. Julie, take it away. What was happening that makes your story fascinating and frightening at the same time, that causes you to, well, you're on meds now, so you're okay, but this sends you all over the country speaking and going to universities and holding events and talking about this to anyone that will listen.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Karen.
So glad you came.
The first thing that started happening to me was that my knees started buckling when I was laughing at jokes with my friends. Very strange sensation, almost as if someone poked behind my knees, but no one had. And I didn't know what to make of that until it started happening to more parts of my body. So I'd be holding a glass of wine at a party, and all at once I'd be laughing at something and almost lose the glass. So that started happening more often, and I asked doctors and friends because it's just so strange.
Like you'd lose control of a part of your body.
Yeah, like you almost fumble for a second and then regain strength until that actually got worse and worse till I was completely collapsing to the ground.
Collapse your whole body. You just fell to the ground.
Fell to the ground and then
Did you lose consciousness?
I always could remember everything that happened. I could hear everything around me, but I just couldn't, at its very worst, I couldn't even move a finger or a toe. And I always wanted to breathe deeper. I felt like, what if I stopped breathing? So that was really the first symptom of narcolepsy that happened to me, but I had no clue what it was or that it was associated with narcolepsy at all.
So you could be in any situation at all and you would fall to the ground and you didn't realize you were actually falling asleep?
Well, I'm not actually falling asleep. So what's happening is I'm having the paralysis of dream sleep, but remaining conscious.
That is so scary to hear.
Yes, so it's inappropriate timing of the dream sleep is what is the basis of narcolepsy. So it's, this perception is if someone is in the middle of a conversation and they fall over asleep, that you've seen in movies.
Well, that's what I would associate. Yeah, they just keel over and they're snoozing.
Right.
Because it's almost, that's how we joke about it, but
that's probably the perception, but really a person, if that were to happen to me, I'd be paralyzed but conscious in my body. It's an incredibly scary experience, and I'm not
no
sleeping.
Control.
Yeah, I'm not sleeping. I'm just sitting there waiting for it to pass.
Oh my God. What if you're driving?
It's never happened to me when I'm driving. It's usually around social interaction, so laughter, especially if I think I'm funny is the worst, but also annoyance or anger. So it's very connected to human emotions, and that's never been a problem when I've been driving. I also have a sense that that's coming on, so to some extent, if I were to feel that I could have, that's a symptom called cataplexy, a symptom of narcolepsy. If I thought I was going to have cataplexy, I would know to pull over or not to drive at all, which has happened. Some days I just wouldn't be able to drive because I would know.
You'd feel an onset.
Yeah.
How do you get through the day with an onset like that, with a cataplexy, as you call it? Oh
my
goodness.
Before I started medication, there was one day that I couldn't leave my house all day. I had to stay on the couch, and I was upset because I had all these social plans I had to skip out on, and my boyfriend actually had to carry me to bed at night because I couldn't walk.
Oh my goodness.
So if
nice
that had happened, if it had happened on a school day, I wouldn't have been able to go to school, and I was in law school and trying to get a job and all this. So, but once I started medication, it improved that symptom to make it more livable.
But this was all before you even knew what it was. So it's pre-med, as they say.
Yeah. And also, I started having these really scary experiences at night where I thought that a burglar was breaking into my apartment, and I could hear him and see him coming at me, but I could never move to respond. And then a few seconds later, there would be no burglar there, and I couldn't find any sign of a break-in in my apartment. And that started happening every once in a while, and more frequently, and I didn't know what that was. And also in law school, I found I was having a hard time staying awake in classes and doing my homework at night. I just thought I was losing my willpower or my drive. I'd always been very motivated, but I just thought maybe I can't handle law school. It's just too hard for me or something. I never thought of it as the sleepiness that we think of narcolepsy falling over, but it was becoming problematic in its own way.
But it never occurred to you that you had a sleep problem per se. You thought of it as a motivation problem, or you couldn't handle, like a stress problem. You couldn't handle law school. It didn't.
Not
the medical
for a while.
problem didn't really at first occur.
Right.
You're a runner, right? You
Yeah.
ran.
Mm-hmm.
You talk in your book about how you love to run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would never really, the sleepiness never affected me when I was running. It was always, monotonous activities. And it was at the end of my first year of law school when I had trouble driving 15 minutes to school in the morning after I'd had 9 or 10 hours of sleep. And I, fighting off sleepiness the whole 15-minute drive. And I said, okay, this isn't normal. There's something wrong here. But it was only at that point, and that had been building up over a couple years. Looking back on it now, I was just coming up with every excuse in the book. I'm not a night person. I'm not a morning person. I just ate a meal. I need caffeine. Everything. I think we all make a lot of excuses for sleepiness. So.
For everything, actually.
Yeah.
And if something appears to be wrong, your first gut instinct was that something was wrong, but we tend to deny it and push it away. And
yeah. And even when I went to a primary care doctor and brought up my sleepiness, at that point saying, I think I have a sleep problem, the doctor asked me to describe my sleepiness to her, and I, tried to give some examples, and she actually said, I think that sounds like normal sleepiness. We all get tired when we drive. Sometimes I have to pull over, get a coffee. And sleepiness is a strange thing. I don't know how to compare mine to anyone else's,
right.
But I had this, gut instinct. I don't think she's talking about the same kind of sleepiness, but I had no real way of knowing that. And I was very discouraged leaving that appointment with her not believing that I had a sleep problem.
But you didn't know where to take it, or you didn't know what to do with it?
Well, she wanted to look at everything else, like, check my thyroid and look into depression, these things. And I had a running injury at the same time, so I went to a sports therapist about my runner's knee, a completely different problem. But she actually identified, she was asking me all these questions about my knees, and she asked me if they ever buckle. And I said, well, there's this strange thing that happens when I'm laughing or when I'm annoyed. My knees give out on me. No one knows what it is. Doesn't have anything to do with my running, never mind. And she's like, I think I've heard of that. And she looked, she said, I think it's a thing called cataplexy. And she wrote the word down on a piece of paper and said, you can go home and look it up. And so as soon as I Googled the word cataplexy, there it was, the definition of what had been happening to me for the last couple of years, and that it was a symptom of narcolepsy. And I didn't know a lot about narcolepsy. I thought it was a joke, but I knew it had something to do with sleepiness. So then I realized, and then the third symptom, that these really scary nightmares that I'd been having for years. So it was like 3 birds in 1 stone. Within a few minutes, I knew all these different parts of my life came together under that one word.
You're telling me that your primary didn't get it, but your sports therapist gave you the inkling of your problem and you diagnosed yourself?
Yeah. Well, I didn't diagnose myself, but
you pretty much did.
Right.
You found the source of your problem by looking up the word that she wrote down. Your sports therapist.
Right.
That is unbelievable.
Right. No, many primary care doctors are not familiar with narcolepsy at all. So people come in asking about the very basic symptoms. I'd also brought up to that same primary care that my knees were giving out with laughter. When you look at the notes, it's hysterical now. It's the definition of narcolepsy almost written out. Me saying the exact triggers for what she should know of narcolepsy, but it's really just not very well known by primary care. Some sleep doctors know a little bit more about it, and neurologists, but that's why I've become such a strong advocate for narcolepsy and trying to get more doctors and nurses and health professionals and school nurses and
well,
teachers
let's see
aware.
how common it is, because I know you know how common it is, right?
It's 1 in every 2,000 people, they believe, about 200,000 Americans.
3 million people worldwide.
Right. But it's very underdiagnosed.
Right.
So
people don't know what it is.
Right. So about a quarter of that population actually have diagnosis and treatment.
That is unbelievable. I'm still getting over the fact of how you found out by looking up, by Googling cataplexy.
Right. And I'm one of the lucky ones. People say it takes them, that I found out within a couple of years. Some people go 10, 15 years. They're going doctor to doctor to doctor, diagnosed with epilepsy, schizophrenia, depression. They'll be in mental hospitals, taking strong medications for other disorders that aren't helping them at all.
Oh my goodness.
So
That is so incredible.
Yeah.
When I know you're a lawyer. Technically, you graduated from law school, even though I know you're not practicing, but you're still not a doctor, graduated from med school. What in the brain have you learned really causes this?
yeah, so it's a specific group of cells called hypocretin.
I knew you would know.
They're in the hypothalamus, and they are responsible. It's almost like they are the trigger or like a light switch between dreaming and consciousness. And the cells have deteriorated in my brain, and so without those cells, it's almost like the switch is just off. It's going inappropriately in between dream, sleep, and consciousness, not following the proper sleep cycle that everyone else experiences. So that is the basis of narcolepsy, and it's very well defined. It's really at the forefront of our understanding of neurological illnesses in that regard.
Wow. And it's also an autoimmune disease, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's an autoimmune component and there's a genetic component that people are predisposed to it. About a quarter of the population in general is predisposed to narcolepsy, but obviously a quarter of the population doesn't have narcolepsy. And then they believe it's different viruses like H1N1 flu that trigger the onset of the autoimmune deterioration in the brain.
Wow. So as you age, does this get worse? Because triggers are out there, environmental triggers?
They believe that once you've had a few triggers and you've developed the full symptoms, it usually doesn't get worse. It sort of plateaus. So I probably plateaued at the end of my first year of law school, where my symptoms were getting much worse very, very quickly, and they don't believe it gets worse after that. The cells are just gone, and they could measure that, but it's kind of an invasive process to measure it, so they don't usually. You have a 24-hour sleep study to diagnose it. And once you're diagnosed and I have it to the extent that I do, the cells aren't coming back, but it won't really get worse either.
So on the range of worse to mild, mild to like serious, where do you fall?
The serious.
The serious.
My doctor said I got the results back, and he was so excited by them because I went into REM sleep during all 5 of my naps. Usually a normal person shouldn't go into any dream sleep during a 20-minute nap. But I'd spent almost all 20 minutes of all 5 of my naps in dream sleep. So this was super exciting to him. and
because it was unique.
Yeah, it's so unique, and he wanted to be able to show this to other neurologists to show them what narcolepsy is on paper. And then he kind of caught himself in thinking, oh, this probably isn't quite as exciting for you. But
yeah, nice.
Yeah.
But so that's not good.
Yeah, but at least it was reaffirming to know that all these different parts of my life I had thought were my fault or something. There really was a real basis for it. So it was validating
it's not like
in a way.
You couldn't handle law school.
Right.
Your brain couldn't stay awake or was. But you have hallucinations with this, burglars and being, what are some of the other things you were describing? Or you describe in your book?
Yeah, I've been instances I thought that I'm being shot in the head.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I'm feeling the pain, or sometimes that someone's trying to wake me up, or a cat scratching me, and it feels as if it's completely real. And then a few minutes go by. I'm looking for this, the scratch marks from the cat, and there's no scratch marks. And then I realize I don't have a cat.
That is really scary.
Yeah.
Because it shows you that the brain can do some really wild things to us.
Right. It's experiencing dream sleep, but again, because I'm too conscious, I'm consciously experiencing aspects of dream sleep.
That really scares me, Julie.
It's not so bad. Well,
you're used to it. I mean, but I can imagine you as a 22-year-old, not so long ago in your little life,
right.
if I may say, because you're only 29, and just you're trying to start out your life, and all these strange things happen. That's really scary. Now, as a child, you're growing up. Anything like this? Any symptoms whatsoever? This just out of the blue? Mm-hmm. I mean, you had to have the flu and a cold and some viruses growing up.
Yeah, I had a very normal childhood. I was always very athletic and very, excelled academically, and always felt that I could burn the candle at both ends. I did in college. I sleep 4 to 6 hours to try to maximize. I was a varsity athlete. I got great grades, had a good social life. So I lived a very full life at the expense of sleep to some extent, but it really wasn't until afterwards that all this started to change so rapidly.
Where are you from originally?
New Hampshire.
Okay, and where'd you go to school?
I went to Brown University.
And then law school?
Boston College.
Okay, so life was, you were privileged, shall we say? You're doing well. And anyone in your family have any symptoms like this, or your parents, grandparents, siblings?
No, we have some neurological illness. We seem to have neurological illness in my family. My brother has MS, and my uncle died of Lou Gehrig's disease.
Oh, goodness, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so we seem to...
This is a lot better than that.
Yes, it is. That is for sure.
So you do have something going on there, but I don't know what the connections are, but still, it's neurological, as you say.
Yeah.
The fact that you've become an advocate about this is amazing.
Thank you.
So you're really taking it to where people can understand, because as you said, to be in a mental hospital or to be taking heavy-duty mental illness type drugs is, and them to be not working but doing other things is really difficult. So this, I hope, will help people. Right. When we talk about treatment, what does that mean for you? Because I know you've got to be on some serious medications to, since you can't reverse the cells, since they're already gone. What does the treatment do for you? What do you take? When do you take it? And then how do you sleep normally now? Answer all the questions.
Okay. I take medication twice a night and twice a day. I take a sedating medication at night called Xyrem, which sedates me into a better quality sleep. That's what the best theory is about it than I could get on my own. It's not like a normal version of sleep whatsoever, but and they don't know exactly why it works, but it does improve my symptoms. And then I take daytime stimulants during the day. The one I take is called New Vigil. So I originally thought that I was going to take treatment and just get better. I had no context for taking medications in my life, so I thought this was going to be like a cure, and I'm going to go back to my life that I had planned and forget narcolepsy. And so that was probably, I reached a low point after starting medication for a few months and realizing there's a lot of side effects. Those side effects are very real, and that they weren't a cure. They were going to improve my symptoms somewhat, and I'm very thankful for that because they're newer treatments that have become available in the last 10 years, so I could live a pretty normal life and still go to law school and graduate. But I was definitely battling a lot of side effects and still battling a lot of symptoms at the same time.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So 1 step, 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards.
Just, pros and cons, balancing what you prefer to be nauseous or to be awake, different things like that.
Tell me some of the symptoms that you still suffer from.
I still get sleepy, usually once or twice a day. I take naps. That's also a big treatment for me. Some doctors prescribe naps for people. It just is not always comfortable in a lot of circumstances. Right. A lot of children have narcolepsy, so some are able to go into the nurse's office or something like that and have a private space. Other kids feel embarrassed by that, right. And I understand. I feel embarrassed. Yeah. I don't like when people tell me you should take a nap. But that's very helpful. And I still have cataplexy where my muscles give out, not nearly as bad, but I still have that almost every day.
So where you feel something coming on.
Yeah.
And then you have to stop what you're doing and kind of take a break?
Yeah, that my eyelids will be fluttering or my jaw might give out on me a little bit or I might lose my knees a little bit. It's not so often anymore, a full body collapse for a minute or two.
God.
Yeah.
But it makes you angry. It's got to make you angry and frustrated because, like you said, you thought it was going to be over and done with once you figured it out.
Yeah.
And you have to live with this.
I went through a lot of anger.
Sure.
I would scream in the car at night when I was driving home from law school. But then I also realized that all the times I wasn't experiencing those symptoms, especially the cataplexy where you're paralyzed and conscious, everything else started to seem so much better than I'd ever seen it. Like the sun got sunnier, you know? And I really felt this genuine joy for life when I could walk or run again that I'd never experienced. And it was only from knowing what it was to have those things taken away. So I almost see it like as a daily reminder of the better times.
Yeah.
And to really not take those for granted, which I know sounds, like a cheesy one-liner.
No, it's understandable with a life like that. It's so difficult. By the way, I want to mention that Julie has a website where she has got so much stuff on this website. It's called julieflygare.com. Spell out the name, julieflygare.com. We have that up for you at some point during the show. And I know, just take a minute to say what you have there, because you have a blog, you have the history of yourself, you have all about narcolepsy, and you have about your book, and you have, tons of stuff. I couldn't even finish reading everything on your website.
Yeah,
because you have so much up on
been
there.
blogging for about 3 years. I have a lot about how to communicate about narcolepsy for people, and also just a lot of empowering for people with narcolepsy to know they don't have to be ashamed, and we can talk about this openly. You know, it's not our faults, and it's not a joke that people think it is.
Yeah, it's
and
definitely
we
not a
can
joke.
be proud of what we have. And so I have a lot of, trying to empower people and give communication tips and videos.
You speak all over the country, as you say, and you hold events a couple times a year, which is great. I love that. And you know what? If you think about it, a lot of us need power naps in the afternoon anyway. It's not such a terrible thing. Yours might be determined more in a sort of forced way, but if you think about it, a lot of us are driving down the road and our eyelids are heavy, and if we don't pull over, we're in trouble. You just get tired. It's not just you.
Right.
Even though I don't have narcolepsy, many adults, possibly twice your age, I'm not saying I am, but there's a lot of people out there who are really, really tired. And sleep in this country these days, there are shows about it, full hours of shows about the fact that people don't get enough sleep.
Right.
And how they're working 2 jobs and they're up all night, and all these side effects from not having enough sleep as it is. And they're not narcoleptics. So you're not alone in the fact that the sleep's messed up in this country because people are working wrong hours. They're falling asleep at the wheel, and they're not taking care of themselves sleep-wise. So at least just getting this out there helps the whole sleep discussion.
Yeah, I think this perception that we don't need sleep, or that's not cool. I wish we could make sleep cool again for kids, that it's not something to brag about not getting. That's the only way I ever talked about sleep growing up. So, oh yeah, I pulled an all-nighter in high school.
Absolutely.
What's so cool about that? That means you didn't plan your time correctly.
Right, and you're not taking care of yourself, and you're not functioning correctly.
Right.
Because some people are like, I only need 6 hours, or I only need 4 to 6 hours. And boy, does that get to you after a while.
Right.
And some of us feel it's a sign of age when we can't stay up like we used to, and maybe it's not such a good thing to begin with. So I totally hear you, and I'm glad you're here to say that. Now, the drugs that you're on, you said there are side effects. You said nausea. What other kinds of things are we talking about here? Upset stomach and
heart racing.
Unmentionables.
I had a lot of heart racing, so I was in the emergency room on the 3rd day of taking stimulants.
The stimulants sort of keep you awake?
Yeah, during the day. And then the medication at night sedates me into a better form of sleep than I could get.
All right.
So it's just a lot of planning. I can't eat 2 hours before I go to bed.
Okay.
I can't drink alcohol, really. And then, it's just a lot to coordinate. I can't really explain it all, except for it's just, I have it down now. It's not so bad. It's
but
so
for other
natural
people
to me.
out there, they need to know that it would be individualized for them. Not
yeah.
everybody would be taking the same thing.
Right.
Just like an ADHD kid, it's customized for them. Not every ADHD kid takes the same thing, even though it's such a broad thing. So just so people know, they also take stimulants and trouble sleeping at night sometimes. So same thing.
Right.
Everybody has to have their own customized.
It's a process to find what works best for.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it.
And
So,
And were you ever anti-meds, by the way? Just curious, because a lot of people were anti-meds. But when you're talking about brain chemistry, as so many things are these days, brain issues, brain chemistry, meds seem to be the only way to regulate them, and some people have a problem with that.
Right. Well, for me at the point when I was diagnosed, like I said, there was one day I couldn't walk at all.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at being paralyzed. It's a really different way of seeing your life than what do I want to put in my body? Are these drugs, going to have some bad effects sometime down the road? A lot of that changes when you really have a very, very serious debilitating illness at that point of what I did, where you're willing to take on more risks than you might otherwise. And I know a lot of the symptoms of narcolepsy are invisible, so you might not see it on my face so much, but you're taking on a lot of symptoms that might change your perception of what you're willing. Some people, exercise is always important to me. It's not a cure whatsoever. It makes my life better. Narcolepsy is a part of my life, so exercise is important to me, but doesn't really necessarily improve my narcolepsy symptoms. But there's a lot of lifestyle habits that people incorporate as well. So there's no cure for narcolepsy right now. They might be able to develop a drug that might mimic those cells that are missing in the brain or something like that. So that would be closer to a cure. That'd be something that would be really acting on those cells that we know are not working right now. So that's the hope. And it's down there, it's down the road. So hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later.
I really do hope so. Excuse me. I want to mention her website one more time. It's julieflygare.com. Something's in my throat. World of information on that website. Thank you so, so much. The book again, Wide Awake and Dreaming. Julie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Julie Flygare. You can reach me at karenallen@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching Forward Motion. See you next time. Bye-bye. I cannot believe that just happened.